Welcome to Booze Motors. Today we're going to take a look at some of the broken ancillaries on the engine. This includes the alternator and power steering pump. But first we need to remove the airbox again and all the ducting pipes. Right, now that the airbox is back off, we can see the alternator and the power steering pump goes just down there. But when we were in the last video, when the engine was running, obviously we were running it without a belt. If you look back here, you've got the voltage regulator. You just about see it at the back. Now that is the bit we've changed, so I'll just show you that part now. Here we have the old voltage regulator off the alternator. If you look closely, you can see the brushes are a bit worn. Here's to hoping this can solve our issue. But yeah, before we can test that it's working properly, we need to reconnect all these alternator lines just here, and then get the belt on obviously at the front. Right, so we've got the wires on there, got the ducting back on, just time to get the airbox back on, then we'll fire it up and see if the alternator is working correctly. The airbox is back on once more. We can now test to see if the alternator is working. We'll see if we've got 14 volts so we're actually charging up properly. I've lost some of the bits for this, so I'll have to do that another time. Something's definitely amiss here. It sounds like a quad bag. Right, so I don't know if you could hear that, but it was obviously misfiring on the video when we had the alternator connected. So now I've disconnected the alternator, I ran it again, and it's still misfiring. So remember I told you about the leaking seal on the top of the injector, just on the injector rail? I'm going to change. Well, I was going to change that out and see if that was the issue, but then as I pulled the rail off, we had a load of dirty old fuel come out. So I'm going to flush a bit of that out and then I'll see if the issue was just old fuel. Looking back at the alternator here, when I touch it, it is absolutely red hot to the touch. This part will definitely need changing. The fix of fitting a new voltage regulator that has new brushes obviously hasn't worked. Anyway, back to the fuel rail. Here I'm slackening off the feed, ready to drain out as much of that old fuel as possible. Now I think these 944s must run a mechanical fuel pump. I had to kick the car over to pump fuel through to the rail, rather than just turn the ignition on like I would have expected. The fuel drained out, the tank's now completely empty. As you can see, this isn't the nicest looking colour. Usually petrol's a little bit lighter than that, well, quite a bit lighter than that. It resembles some bodily fluid that we daren't mention. Anyway, before we fill it back up with some fresh petrol, we are going to use this spark plug tester here. That's just going to test to make sure none of the HT leads are broken down, or the coil's broken down, or we've got a problem with the rotor. Spark on all the plugs. So let's just fill it back up with some fresh petrol. Just put a gallon in. And then we can fire it up and see if the misfire's gone. I've still not managed to order the right size O-rings. I've not got any in my special little box. So I'll have to measure those with a vernier caliper and then I'll get some in over the next couple of weeks. And hopefully we can get this car done and out of the way. Everything's in properly. Go on, go again. Still not sounding perfect, but hopefully a little rev will help ungun those injectors. "20 seconds on, already starting to run a lot smoother. Lovely. So before we get the alternator, well the new alternator back on, I'm going to change the O-rings that go on the top of the injector. Now these are £40 from Porsche, but I just got my vernier calipers here, measured the size of them, and then just got ordered some ones the same size. These cost £2.14 instead of £40, so quite a good saving there. Anyway, let's get those on, and then we can get the rest of the ancillaries on, and all the engine's done on this. Right, so we've got one of the new injector seals on there. The rest of them just need to go on these end too. Then the fuel rail can go back on, and then that should be our little fuel leak there sorted out. So here we have it, the alternator's finally here. Way too much bubble wrap as always, but better the safe than sorry, I suppose. This is a recondition unit on an exchange basis. Not bad for £150, especially considering as second-hand units are fetching around £300 on eBay. Right, let's get the old one off. Now that the wires are off the back of it, it's just 2 bolts at the top and bottom to remove it. Reinstallation is very simple, it's just in reverse. 2 bolts top and bottom and a tensioner just below that. Following this, I can then refit the belt and then the wires at the back of it. Right, so that's the rebuilt power steering pump on there. Just 2 lines, one at the top there and then one at the bottom there. These lines are fine, don't need changing. Just a little adjuster there. Right, let's go back up top and then we can top up the system. Right, so now time to put some power steering fluid in there. It's just PSF, red power steering fluid, not the CHF stuff that's usually green. If I put the green stuff in, it'll probably knacker the power steering rack up, maybe even the pump that I've just rebuilt. Anyway, I looked in the book and it said it takes 0.7 litres capacity, which doesn't seem like a lot considering all the pipe work and whatnot, but we'll put that in, then we'll run it through a bit, just lock to lock, and then check the level. A little bit of fluid has already gone out of there. This is a 1 litre bottle and it was 750 ml. I did use a little bit of this to top up on the MX-5. Now time to get the engine running again, ready for bleeding the power steering system. Ignore the slight whine, this is normal as air purges out the system. Before going any further, now is a good time to check for leaks at the front of the system. Following this, off camera, I topped the system up with another 250 millilitres of power steering fluid before going lock to lock to purge out more air from the system. The reservoir then required another 250 millilitres of fluid. This brings the total amount of fluid used to 1,250 millilitres. The system is now up to level and sitting at maximum. Right, so yeah, the test for the alternator. Obviously, I'm running here 14 volts, which is perfect, but I'm connected to the van. Now, the test will be to shut the ignition off on the van, and then hopefully we maintain at least 13 volts. And that's a good sign, we're still running. Let's go see how many volts we got. A lovely 14.5. So that is the alternator problem also sorted. And also if we're looking here, where we replaced the O-rings, it's now perfectly dry. All of those, so that's also worked. Right, so what's left for this one now? I need to get the front bumper and lower valance on and painted. I also need to fit the correct pins and clips and springs for the brake pads. I've been waiting for those for 6 weeks now. And then I also need to give all of the bodywork a real good polish. As always, thank you so much for watching. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button down below and we'll see you next time.